Doink. Okay, Gerard and I are just talking quickly regarding charts GitLab merge request 789, which is adding Grafana chart as a optional dependency to be deployed with the rest of our charts, and some of the hiccups that we have with what's going on. It's been delayed in the cycle further than we wanted to, but we just want to make sure we touch base on it before the end.
Yep.
Okay, so you mentioned you had a couple of quick concerns as well, so
yeah, I mean,
go ahead and start with those.
Well, the proposal stuff we'll hold off till later. Let's hit the chart first.
Okay.
So, and actually, I think yesterday I was thinking I never got to it, and this morning I was like, I gotta get what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna push my changes from my fork back over to the repo, so other people are seeing it now too. I should have done that a while ago and just started working off that repo instead of staying on my fork. What I have done, and actually Monday it came down to pretty much, well, not a complete rewrite, reorganization and rewrite some stuff. As I struggled with it this weekend thinking about it, and Monday it suddenly occurred to me, this makes sense to make it a subchart of the GitLab. This is the confusing part. Not the GitLab, top level GitLab, but the sub GitLab chart.
Okay.
Because it's just wrapping the existing Grafana chart. We add an ingress, we add a secret. I'm adding dashboards too, the standard dashboards. So we're just adding things to that chart. So that chart actually gets installed pretty much as it normally does. The only real critical, there's a couple minor things that get updated that we add, such as data source and so forth. The only critical thing really at the moment that I'm having problems with is in the Grafana INI, we need to set the root URL. I did actually get it working correctly, so it's off the GitLab hostname // So that is actually working and working well.
Okay.
Um,
Did we have to fork the chart to do that?
No, that's the beauty of it. We don't fork the chart or anything. It's just sort of I'm just writing this subchart as a shim for the Grafana chart.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna want to see this branch because I don't quite understand.
Push it now real quick because let me find the tab I was working on. There it is. I should have an upstream here. Hey, look, there's an upstream. Okay, so and I'm on that branch. Okay. That's not tracked. So let's sage support Grafana. Okay, there we go. It just got pushed. So if you go into the GitLab and the charts alongside of like Gitaly, excuse me, is that right? Yeah, Gitaly, GitLab Shell, Mailroom, all the rest of them. There's now a GitLab Grafana chart. Now there is actually another site issue about this, and we'll talk about that when we get to the proposal aspect.
Okay.
All right, so the issue I'm really having, I think the biggest issue I'm having right now, and the rest of it should be falling into, starting to fall into working now, is in that values at the very bottom, the values for the GitLab Grafana chart. There is a section for the Grafana INI. Right now I have it hard coded because I've tried a number of different ways trying to generate or trying to get the domain name that we specify and put it into that values. There's, and I know values, there's only a certain number of things you can go in there. And I was looking for that yesterday, looking for that list and see if there's some crafty way I could get it in there and inject it.
Hmm. See, that's what I was mentioning on the original changes, was that there are certain things that would need to be changed upstream to allow us to override them from downstream. And one of those things is the ability to actually pull those, provide those as a template as opposed to requiring the property, so that if the property wasn't present, someone else can actually override the content with their own template, which right now it requires hard setting, which you're seeing here. That also comes down to a problem where in the Grafana values, I am beyond uncomfortable with the concept of setting the password there.
Yes, I'm just got that temporarily, and that's actually going to move up to the meta chart. Some of this stuff is actually, I think, going to move into the meta chart where what I'd call the meta chart, top level chart that pulls everything together.
Okay, so the problem is not that it's where it is, it's that it exists at all.
Specified. Yeah. Well, I mean, we can do it the same way we do the root password, basically, randomly generate it and set it. I think the original specification was actually looking to have it set there or have it in the somehow specified in the chart. Pull that back up here.
Oh, so they do have the ability to use admin.existingSecret.
Yes.
So if we instead create the secret that matches this, then we won't really have a problem. Because if we then set grafana.admin.existingSecret to have an actual content, let's see here, split templates.
Now, ideally, and I haven't really looked closely enough at it, but ideally we could actually, using the existing secret, and I think the root, the GitLab initial root secret that's out there, I think we could actually do that and just have that will be the initial login for Grafana. Now, the problem, one of the problems there is that we don't really have persistence here, although we can add it. So any changes to the account will not, I don't think will take effect. So if you rotate the password or you add an account, it won't work.
Okay, so here's the thing. If its secret is put into its state and is no longer tied to the secret itself, then it's the same thing as our initial root password. The behavior is identical.
Yeah.
So I'm not as worried. Looking now at their template for the deployment itself, their actual, oh, that's the user key. Please, yep, they put the password in the environment. I don't want to fork Grafana, but I just found a reason to fork Grafana. For those that may watch later, there's an architectural decision that is specifically stating that we go against the 12-factor app designs especially when secrets are in environment. This is because this is a bad practice. If you are using a Docker-based instance and somebody uses a privileged container, which GitLab Runner often does, then all you have to do is Docker info, and you can pull the environment out of every running thing.
Yep.
And you can scan for, pull the whole thing and literally just grep the output for password and collect passwords. It's not that if you know what you're doing, you can go deeper into the container and find the mount and get the content. You can do that, okay? It's more about making it harder for people to do that. You're more likely to go, why is somebody injecting themselves into my container from a different container than why is somebody running Docker info, right? The Docker info is going to be like, somebody ran it. Injecting from another container in a different namespace, you're going to notice that, right? It's not necessarily more secure. It's just harder to collect the information on. And we can make our customers a tiny bit safer by not doing this bad practice. Okay, so I really didn't want to fork Grafana.
Yeah, same here. I agree
now we have functional problems, right? We need to be able to template some items that we can't template. Their password will either be taken from a property and put into a secret, or will be injected to the pod through a environment variable. Big fat no. So we have enough reasons to begin a fork process. However, I do think that it makes sense to try and upstream as many of those items in the future. That being said, I would still prefer that this not be under GitLab Grafana, but it be underneath Grafana itself. The gitlab.gitlab.host will actually give us the URL. So we have a generator that's top level namespace that will give us the path that we need. I don't think we need any particular templates out of the GitLab subset that would require it to actually be underneath of Grafana itself.
I tried using some of the template macros yesterday, and in the values.yaml, it will not do it. It won't do anything. And
it's not going to work there.
Yeah.
It's only going to operate, the template macros will only work inside of items that are inside of template /star on whatever tree they're in. And the way templates work is templates and definitions for macros are actually global. So it basically collects all of them, does a base compilation, and then goes back through and does it again. So that's how we can actually override the PostgreSQL password, is because they have one in theirs, but ours is one level higher, so it gets read first. So when you have requirements, even though they're external, it will actually read yours, pull the requirements, pull the rest of them in, set up the file tree, and then run down the file tree. And it starts top level down, 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 which is why if we set PostgreSQL password, the template from the Postgres chart gets overridden with ours.
Makes
Joys
sense.
of inheritance. Yay! Yeah. There'd be funny things.
Actually, sort of the opposite of inheritance.
Yes and no. Because
now inheritance, you take the more specific one.
Yeah, kind of. It depends on which kind of inheritance you're referring to. You're referring to inheritance by content through namespace, or if you're referring to inheritance through object-oriented design.
Yeah.
This is not object-oriented design.
Not at all.
Nope. Okay, so that being said, that's sad, but now we have viable reason to begin this work. Which means,
Yeah.
believe it or not, we should, in theory, actually have the ability to crank this out this afternoon. We just add it to another fork list. Yay! And then we put it on a probably a P3, P4 to upstream that what changes that we can. I say that because we specifically got Redis and PostgreSQL to actually make changes to match our behaviors so that when we can make that big leaping blocking change, we won't have to have as many funny override behaviors as we did before.
Right.
So we'll actually be able to entirely drop our Redis fork, which, yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly.
I don't have to keep a fork of Redis or Redis HA or customized containers. They're just fixed. Thank you, Bitnami. Super happy about that.
Yep.
Okay. So what I'm looking at is that we would actually take the current set of the Grafana chart from stable and pull that into our chart, right?
Yep.
We can then, if we choose, strip any redundancy out that we may want to. I'm not saying that we should or need to, I'm saying can. But it basically comes down to most of the templates end up getting wrapped with an if enabled.
Okay.
Simple enough.
Yep.
So we pull it out from requirements. We put a direct copy of the current stable, which in charts is currently 3.511 on the chart, app version 6.25. This has a Kubernetes dependency of at least 1.8, which we're well above that. By the way, kube version is a new thing. I haven't seen this in the chart.yaml before.
Yeah, I've not seen it either.
Which will be really handy, actually, because I'm tempted to set that value now in our GitLab chart. Because there be things that break when you get below a certain level, and that's not our fault. We're just using features that didn't exist in 1.8. Okay. Why? Oh, I think that's just an error. I think you just copied the index from GitLab Runner, and it's got like all the GitLab Runner properties.
I just copied one and started modifying some stuff.
No, it's fine. I'm just looking at it going, I understand. And all of a sudden, oh, yeah, that'll do it. Okay. Then I think we basically have a proceed forward. Right. So I'm going to put a summary in here on a comment.
Okay.
Saying that basically after further discovery, as legal people would say it, further research, the admin password is passed as an environment variable, and the secret by default is populated as a part of the Helm chart. So we're going to fork it, we're going to split some templates, and we're going to take the password out of the environment.
Okay.
And then we can figure out from there where exactly we want to go. I've added a comment to that.
All right.
I'm also taking a look at the linked item from Stan, specifically GitLab CE MR28937, where there is a way to actually specify Grafana URL addition, I think. I'm looking for the details of how this works out. Yes, there's basically a way to actually specify Grafana URL as a property, which in theory would allow someone to use their own Grafana externally and then configure the GitLab chart to have an internal link to it. So it's not actually specifically related to this change.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not specifically related to our inclusion of the chart itself. Our chart, if you deploy Grafana, will automatically configure all of these items for you. So
Right.
that's good. If for some reason we had a problem with the ingress and actually had to add a new host name, then this would have come into play because then we could populate this value.
And originally that was all I could end up doing is, but then I found I could actually, I didn't think you could create a separate ingress using the same host name, but you can. And so once I started figuring that out, that made the routing of our preferred URL easy to do. I shouldn't say correct, but easy to do. So
right. That much is actually really nice.
Yeah, and that's been working consistently. There is a minor problem every once in a while I've noticed, and something we're gonna have to look at is, and this seems to be a Grafana issue, is when you do an update or an upgrade, sometimes the Grafana loses its mind and it doesn't really take the routing correctly, it looks like. Again, as I get again, keep in mind, things have been unstable and been moving around quite a bit, so it might have been stuff I've been doing. But once we get it stable to where we can do a bunch of upgrades and see what happens, make sure that that's not a normal behavior. And if it is a normal behavior, figure out why is Grafana doing that, and then see if there's a way we can fix that.
Right.
Hopefully not Grafana code.
Yeah. We're going to have to get into that if we don't have to. Hopefully, with having it stable, we won't really see that problem.
Yeah, that's I'm hoping.
What I am expecting to bump into is how do we automate the configuration of Grafana with OAuth? So in the omnibus, when it does its thing, it actually makes API calls for you.
Mm-hmm.
This is a problem within the chart because we won't know specifically when Unicorn is up to be able to make that call prior to Grafana starting up. So
Right.
we can't pre-authorize.
Sort of, yes. And this goes back to our discussion early on. It's going to take some work on our side to do this. But the way we do it is just like they do with the data sources and the dashboards today. We add another container in there as a sidecar that will then consolidate and do the OAuth piece for us. In other words, once that sidecar is able to validate, saying, yes, I now can get to client secrets and things like that,
Yep.
it can then generate the OAuth section throw it into the config file and cause Grafana to restart, which will then pick up the OAuth.
Okay, so it has an internal watch behavior. Great.
Sort of, yeah. It's actually in the sidecars. Not. I was looking at the sidecar code the other day for something, and it's like, okay. But I think what it does is basically, because they do this with the dashboards and stuff. Although dashboards easy, it's probably look more at the data sources. All those data sources, if I remember correctly. No, actually, the data sources can be specified in files too. Usually, what they do is they like specifically the dashboards. I'm very familiar with that. Is they'll watch for config maps that have a specific label, and when they find a new config map that has that label, they pull all those config maps together, drop them into a directory, and that is then given to the Grafana container. Effectively, it's a co-mounted mount point, and then I think they shoot the container in the head because of the restart.
That works.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've seen this pattern discussed in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I've debated the usefulness for us, but because there's not a pub sub push messaging from Kubernetes that, hey, something over here happened. Instead, you have a poller and a subcontainer as a sidecar that does it. And then everybody mounts a shared tempfs, right? So this is not a persistent disk.
Yes. Yeah. It's
Everybody in the pod mounts a shared tempfs the way we do with the init containers, and then when configuration changes, it pops it in place and then shoots the initial one in the head and boink.
Yep.
Or we say shoot in the head, but there's also some processes actually support getting hopped. And those ones don't die, which is kind of nice, as opposed to, hey, one of the containers in your pod died suddenly.
Yeah.
Why did it happen? Oh, that's because your sidecar actually told it to go off wheat.
It could be that Grafana does take a hop. I'd have to go look at the sidecar a little closer to see what it actually does to force it. But one way or the other, it either shoots it in the head or it hops it. So,
okay.
I think we can probably use that to get the OAuth stuff working, because I would love to get that working too. Not for this generation, of course. This generation will just get it out, but in a rev or so, 2 revs, we'll probably revisit this and get the OAuth stuff working. The other thing that I've done a little differently than the standard Grafana chart is all the data sources and the dashboard config maps. Instead of having just the Grafana dashboard and Grafana data source labels on them, I prefixed them with GitLab. That way we don't conflict with if we have a customer.
Somebody else's Grafana.
Yeah, puts their Grafana and GitLab in the same namespace. We don't conflict with dashboards.
Right. That goes right akin with what we do for our Nginx, is we intentionally set the class different.
I saw that. Yep. Yeah. And when I first started looking at some of this stuff, I was like, well, how do we prevent our Nginx from doing other things? That made sense once I saw that. It's like, good.
Okay. So I think we have the work to go forward.
Yeah. I just pulled down the Grafana chart. I've got it in there. So I can start working on some of those pieces to modify Grafana. I still see we're going to still have the GitLab Grafana chart there because we need to inject a couple minor things, one being the ingress.
No, we can probably modify their ingress.
I don't think unless we go extensively modify, I don't think we can. I thought it was somewhat hardcoded. Let's look here.
They have
Oh, they
host
do. Ingress path.
available, and they even have path.
You're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. Okay.
So they have .values.ingress
Ingress annotation.
host
Good. Okay.
and values ingress path.
Yep. Okay. No, okay. We can actually use their ingress then.
So yeah, if anything, the biggest issue is that we need to be able to template values ingress hosts.
Yes.
And that becomes an interesting issue. Because they're doing a range walk on a property array. The templates only output strings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that part's quaint.
The other question I would have then is the dashboards, our customized dashboards. Where do we want to put them?
Yeah, no, I think between looking at this one and realizing that, like, I know how to do it and I know how ugly it is
Mm-hmm.
to replace a range walk behavior. Yeah. We probably do want to actually keep that GitLab Grafana chart and only have it output these things for it to behave on. Yeah.
Okay.
Works for me. Heritage, leave that one. And do we have a way to set like its monitoring class? Is that already a property value or does it require an alteration?
When you say monitoring class, what do you mean monitoring class?
So like the labeling that it looks for, instead of being, it would be GitLab Grafana instead of Grafana. That label, is that a property? Like what it's supposed to be searching for?
I'm still missing something here. I'm sorry.
Okay. So what property is used to control which config maps it's supposed to load as dashboards?
Oh, that is configurable. That is from the outside. That is a sidecar.dashboards.label. I think it's sidecar.dashboards.label. Let's see.
Yes, indeed it is. Sidecar, dashboards, label, the label that config maps with dashboards are marked with.
Yep. Exactly. No, that's what I'm setting now to pull in dashboards.
And there's also a sidecar data sources label.
Yep.
Which is great. And we also have the ability to set search namespace. This is great.
Mm-hmm.
Because now we can specifically say, see here, if specified, sidecar will search for data source and config maps inside this namespace. Otherwise, the namespace in which the sidecar is running will be used. Oh, good. Then we don't actually have to modify that. It already self-defines itself.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Woo! Happy camper.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not really a big fan of let's template every property just so we can override them. I'd rather not do that if we don't have to. I like it when people think, maybe I should default to self-contained.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, that's happy. So we will fork this chart, make the necessary changes. One of those being templating the labels. That's what provides us the ability to change that. Otherwise, when you say change the Grafana search labels, you have to set the property a bunch of times. But
right.
Yeah, so yeah, that's a problem because if we have to set the property a bunch of times, then we have to set it in multiple places, right? Because our GitLab Grafana, so GitLab.GitLab Grafana.side block, we'd have to set it in 4 pieces instead of just 1 or 2. So we could probably actually make it a global and actually just put in the template behaviors that it'll read from global. We do the same thing with PostgreSQL. And that's in the upstream 3.x charts from Postgres. So if you provide global PostgreSQL password, it will actually use that password instead of its localized configuration. Basically, actually, you just use a default behavior or coalesce. So we'll have to see exactly how they're doing it, and we may not actually use template. We can actually just add the global behavior in, and it would just work.
Yeah, I think that's probably, I think the second is probably what I'm thinking. I know I would regret saying this in some respects, but I would almost tend to say just we set it to here's the value. We don't make it a configuration. We just say here, GitLab underscore Grafana underscore dashboards. That's the label. And I know at some point someone will come up with a reason why it should be configurable.
Yeah, they do a straight value behavior through deployments.yaml line 136. So they provide it as a property in environment named label. So that's very simple to do a coalesce with a global. We just change it from .values and we insert coalesce.values.global.grafana. And poof, everybody's happy. Because we do it without modifying anything other than that line. So we globalize the things we need and we templatize the URL and the namespace. No, we don't need the name. We don't need the namespace. That's right. We don't need the namespace. Sorry. Catching up with all the things. Yeah, I think that squares us. I have it in front of me. Okay. So I think for now we're actually clear with where we need to go. Do you want to split this work with me, or do you want to do it?
I'll split it with you a little bit, certainly, because I'm still a little fuzzy on how we're going to get the root URL, the values of the root URL, the way you're thinking.
Okay.
And that's mostly what I wanted to actually get in touch with you yesterday and start talking about it yesterday, and I get sidetracked. But so today was a good time to really, let's put a pin in that and get that done, because I think that's, to me, that's the biggest issue. I think the rest, again, I know you things I wasn't thinking about as far as like how they're handling the password. Okay, fine. I can go find some of those pieces and get them sorted out.
Like, for example, we have to figure out how to get Grafana to read it from a file. Otherwise, we do the fun jump, and so there's an ugly but easy way to jack over the top of this behavior. Effectively, you replace the command string with a call to sh, which then inside of the container exports the content into an environment and then calls the actual operation.
Right.
Basically, nsubst the hard way. So I'm kind of hoping we can actually just convince Grafana to just read some things from the file, and we don't need to introduce ERB behaviors. But I'd rather not actually go down the route of modifying their container if we don't have to, but it'll take some exploration to see what is actually inside of their container. So
I'm looking at their config file format, and does not look like there's a good way to get the admin password other than in the config file.
So it either has to be in the environment or in the config file.
I suspect so, yeah.
Okay, so the in container environment export prior to process execution is probably the route we want to go.
Say that again.
Okay.
Sorry, just to say it again so I sort of comprehend what you're saying.
If our two options are hard code it into the config map, which is a no-no, right? Because config maps should not contain secrets.
Yep.
Or through the environment, right? Because we can't convince it to read content. I'd rather not go through the point that we have to do like an ERB template behavior. Then probably what we should do is replace the actual command so that we actually export the content of the password secret into the environment and then execute the pod or the actual process that the container would normally use.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It makes a little bit more sense. I'm also looking at the, well, that's curious. Oh no, because they're going into the environment. Yeah. I'm looking inside the currently running pod just to see if this is something that like might be doable. But I don't think so. Okay.
Okay. So do we think we have a step forward for this point? Is globalizing some of the values, continuing with GitLab Grafana to actually drop the configuration and the ingress to not have to override so much stuff within the chart itself. And then figuring out how to inject the secret content to the environment. Like it's about 4 things. So that makes me happy.
Yep.
Now,
I'm currently looking to see if there's a good way we can inject the secrets right now. With luck, there'll be a reasonable way.
extra init containers is easy. There's extra secret mounts. Yep. So they do a range walk on extra secret mounts.
Okay.
With name, mountain path, and read only, which that should always be true because you can't modify a secret. Just saying. So that pretty much gives us everything I can think of. I'll have to dig out the pattern that we use for overriding the way we pass in the actual environment. But that would basically, we can use extra secret mounts to actually get that to mount. Or we can just modify the container and actually mount the darn thing instead of trying to insert it through the environment. By just adding the additional mount.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they're right, okay, they got the extra secret mounts. I'm just not sure how they're getting that into effectively Grafana INI or some other way that they accept. Pretty much just Grafana INI.
Right. We're not going to be able to use Grafana INI because we would have to like inject the content somehow, which isn't going to work.
Well, unless they've already got something there, but I don't see anything right off, and I was really hoping to find their Docker file so I could go dig into that a bit more. Oh, here we go. There's their issues. There's the Grafana Docker is their repo. Okay, good.
Yeah, straight up Grafana 6.2.5.
Come on, GitHub. There we go.
not that big.
Nope.
Two 248 megs. I wish our image was that small.
It could be. It's just we wouldn't be able to do what we do.
We do have bash. It is not a symlink. Okay, their base image includes RC scripts. Debian based on something. Okay.
Oh, can we use that? That would be nice.
I'm needing context.
I know. Sorry. Give me half a second. I'm just looking at one or two things here.
Mm-hmm.
I will give you context. I'm just looking through. So they have a whole provisioning system, which is mostly geared toward their data sources and dashboards. But they also have, well, that's off the working dir. You probably can't configure that, but it's the working dir. Working dir would be etc Grafana. So they have two additional file locations that looks like they source. Working dir /conf /defaults.ini and working dir /conf /custom.ini. So I'm wondering if conf is a mount point, like a temporary tempfs or something like that, if we could just inject an init container that would allow us to generate the custom INI file, so that when they start up, they read that section, read the custom INI and override their Grafana INI. And actually, maybe they do have extra mount points. Maybe that's how we could do it. Sorry, it's actually user share Grafana is the working directory. They got a default INI in there. There's a sample toml, LDAP toml. It is on the overlay on root, so extra volume mounts. How are they using that? Name, mount path, subpath. Oh, nice. Okay. I think that might solve all the problems, and we wouldn't have to actually fork Grafana, I think.
No, we'd still have to.
For what?
Because in order to get it to not create a secret, to not have the value in the properties or attempt to inject one through the environment, which may override the .ini file, we have to get past that. So the problem is, even if you let it provide that from an existing secret, it still injects the password as an environment item.
Yeah, maybe. Okay. What do they have in their values file for that?
Yeah, because they'll. Yeah, because if you hit .existing secret, it will not create the secret for you. If you let it create the secret for you, it will then still take whatever that secret's name is and inject it through the environment. So we still have to go around that problem.
Yeah, I think you're right. I was hoping we could get around some of that. Damn it. I lost the. Just like that.
Whoops. Huh? Okay. I'm going to take a mental break, and
Okay.
I'll get back to you. We have pretty much stages that we need to go through. How do we want to break this work up? Think on that while I take a little bit of break.
Yeah, not sure yet, but yeah, I'll think about that for a bit.
Okay. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Otherwise, I can terminate the call.
why don't you terminate for a bit? I'll think for a bit, and then when we get back together, we'll continue working. I want to start hitting some of the proposal aspect too. The breaking up the GitLab chart proposal I put out. I want to understand more what you're saying there. I've read it and read what you said, and a little fuzzy on some things. And so,
Okay.
and it doesn't have to happen today. I mean, we could do it next week too.
That's okay.
So,
Sounds good.
the proposal stuff's not critical. So, all right.